Yoto Shinna died! Ay!
My wife was still wearing her federal badge when the HOA president pointed at our porch and told the police, "That woman is trespassing in my neighborhood too." That was the moment Officer Daniels stopped writing in his notebook. He looked at my wife. Then he looked at the badge clipped to her belt. Then he looked back at the woman who had called 911 because I parked my truck in my own driveway. And I watched the color drain from her face so fast you would have thought somebody pulled a plug. Now, before I explain why 2 patrol cars, 1 HOA president, 3 board members, and half the neighborhood ended up standing in front of my house on a Tuesday evening, you need to understand something. This did not start with the police. It did not even start with my truck. It started with a woman who confused a clipboard with a crown. My name is Marcus Ellison. I'm 52 years old, and I've lived most of my life in North Carolina. I'm not rich. I'm not famous. I don't own a law firm or a political office or some secret company with my name on the side of the building. I'm a diesel mechanic. For almost 30 years, I've worked on engines big enough to make the floor shake when they turn over. Farm trucks, school buses, delivery rigs, county equipment, old tractors that should have retired before I graduated high school. If it burns diesel and refuses to start, somebody usually calls me. My wife, Denise, is the opposite. She is quiet in a way that makes people underestimate her, which has always been their first mistake. She does not raise her voice. She does not argue with people who are committed to being wrong. She just watches, listens, and remembers everything. For 21 years, Denise worked for the federal government. I won't dress it up more than necessary. She was an investigator with a federal agency that handled housing fraud, grant misuse, and public program abuse. Her job was paperwork, interviews, records, audits, and people who thought rules only applied to everyone else. By the time she retired, she could look at a form, a permit, or a funding document and tell you where the lie was hiding. We moved into Briar Glen Estates because we wanted quiet. That was the whole reason. Our youngest son had gone off to college. My mother had passed the year before. Denise had finally retired after spending too many years reading case files late at night at the kitchen table. We were tired. Not broken, just tired in the way life makes you after raising kids, burying parents, paying bills, and getting up every morning whether you feel like it or not. Briar Glen looked peaceful. Tree-lined streets, brick houses, clean sidewalks. A pond with ducks that acted like they owned the place. Every mailbox looked the same. Every lawn had that sharp green look people get when they spend more money on grass than I spend on boots. The house itself was modest compared to the others. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a small garage, a wide driveway, and a covered porch where Denise immediately decided she would drink tea every evening. The first week was almost perfect. Neighbors waved. A retired teacher across the street brought banana bread. The man next door, Mr. Castillo, helped me carry a workbench into the garage, then stayed an extra hour talking about old Chevys. Then, on day 8, I met Patricia Vale. Patricia was the HOA president, although she carried herself more like a governor inspecting disaster damage. She arrived in a cream-colored Lexus SUV at 9:12 in the morning. I remember the time because I had just finished changing the oil in my truck and was wiping my hands on a rag when her tires rolled to a stop at the end of my driveway. She stepped out wearing white pants, a navy blazer, and sunglasses large enough to cover half her face. In one hand, she carried a tablet. In the other, a leather folder stamped with the Briar Glen Estates logo. She did not say hello. She said, "You must be the new owner." I looked around my own driveway like there might be another new owner standing behind me. "That would be me," I said. Her eyes moved from my boots to my truck, then to the open garage behind me. Not curious, inspecting. "I'm Patricia Vale, HOA president. I like to personally welcome new residents and make sure expectations are understood early." That was my first warning. People who say expectations that quickly usually mean orders. She handed me a packet thick enough to qualify as reading material. Architectural guidelines, parking standards, exterior maintenance rules, noise expectations, seasonal decor policies, approved plant lists, prohibited structures, and community harmony procedures. I took it because my mama raised me to be polite. Denise would later call that mistake number 1. Patricia glanced at my truck again. It was a dark blue Ford F-350, 12 years old, clean but not pretty. The paint had a few scratches. The bumper had a dent from a trailer tongue that got away from me in 2018. It was a work truck, not a parade float. "Commercial vehicles are restricted," she said. "It's not commercial," I said. "It's my personal truck." "It appears commercial." "Does appearing commercial change the title?" She blinked. Not long, just enough to let me know she did not enjoy questions. "There are aesthetic standards here, Mr. Ellison." "I'm sure there are." She looked past me into the garage. My tool chest was against the wall, air compressor beside it. Nothing outside, nothing leaking, nothing loud. "You should also know that residents are not permitted to operate repair businesses from residential property." "I don't." "Good," she said, in a tone that suggested she had already decided I did. Then she smiled. It was not warm. It was the kind of smile people use when they think politeness is a leash. "We've worked very hard to maintain the character of Briar Glen. I hope you and your wife will be a good fit." I should have known right then. She was not welcoming us. She was warning us. For the next 2 weeks, Patricia drove by our house every morning. Same Lexus, same slow roll, same turn of the head as she passed the driveway. If my truck was outside, she looked at it. If my garage door was open, she looked inside. If Denise was on the porch, Patricia gave a tight little wave that never reached her face. Denise noticed everything. "She's building a file," she said one evening. We were sitting on the porch. She had tea. I had coffee. The ducks were making noise near the pond like they had formed a union. "A file on what?" I asked. "You. For owning a truck? For not reacting." That was Denise. She didn't just see what people did. She saw why it bothered them when you didn't respond. The first violation notice arrived on a Friday. It was printed on heavy paper, mailed in an official HOA envelope, and written in that strange language organizations use when they want a simple complaint to sound like a court order. The notice claimed my truck violated Section 7.3 of the Briar Glen parking guidelines because it was oversized, visually inconsistent with residential harmony, and suggestive of commercial activity. Suggestive. That word almost made me laugh. They fined me $150 and ordered the vehicle removed from public view within 7 days. I read it twice, then handed it to Denise. She read it once. Then she walked to the hallway closet, pulled out a blue binder, and opened it on the kitchen table. That binder had our closing documents, HOA documents, emails, inspection paperwork, insurance, the truck title, everything. Denise had built it before we ever moved in because she said HOPE was not a filing system. She found Section 7.3 in under a minute. The rule prohibited commercial vehicles with visible business lettering, attached equipment racks, hazardous cargo, or vehicles over a stated weight limit when parked on the street overnight. My truck had no lettering, no rack, no cargo, and it was parked in my driveway, not the street. Denise placed the notice beside the rule and tapped both with her finger. "She's hoping you won't read," she said. I sent a polite email. I attached a photo of the truck, a copy of the title, the rule section, and a short explanation that the vehicle did not violate the parking guideline. Patricia replied 46 minutes later. "Mr. Ellison, the board has discretion to interpret aesthetic impact beyond the literal language of the rules. Please comply to avoid additional enforcement." That was when Denise made the face. Not angry. Interested. The kind of interested that meant somebody had stepped onto thin ice and started dancing. For a while, I tried to let it go. I had work. Denise had a garden she was putting together near the side fence. We were still unpacking boxes. I had no interest in spending retirement-adjacent years arguing with a woman who probably alphabetized her grudges. But Patricia was not finished. The second violation came because I had 2 trash cans visible from the side angle of the street for 43 minutes after pickup. The third came because Denise planted purple salvia in a flower bed, even though the approved plant list only mentioned blue salvia. Same plant family, different shade. Apparently, that was enough to threaten community harmony. The fourth came because my garage door was open for an extended period, while I was installing shelves. Each notice carried a fine. Each fine increased. Each email from Patricia became colder. Then came the board meeting. Briar Glen held monthly meetings in the clubhouse near the pond. Denise wanted to go with me. I told her I could handle it. She gave me that wife look that says, "You can, but that does not mean you should." I went alone anyway. Mistake number 2. The clubhouse smelled like lemon cleaner and old coffee. About 20 homeowners sat in folding chairs. Patricia sat at the front table with 3 board members beside her. She had a small wooden gavel, which told me everything I needed to know about how seriously she took herself. During open comments, I stood and calmly explained the truck issue. No drama, no insults, just the rule, the facts, and the driveway. Patricia let me finish. Then she leaned into her microphone. "Mr. Ellison, we appreciate your perspective. However, this community has a standard of presentation. Many residents have expressed concern that your vehicle creates an appearance inconsistent with Briar Glen's residential environment." I looked around the room. Nobody made eye contact. That's when I noticed something. The people were not shocked by Patricia. They were tired of her. There is a difference. Shocked people whisper. Tired people stare at the carpet. A man in the back, later introduced to me as Frank Delaney, raised his hand and said, "My son parks his truck in my driveway when he visits. Is that a violation too?" Patricia didn't look at him. "This discussion concerns Mr. Ellison's vehicle." Another woman asked, "Did we vote on interpreting the rule that way?" Patricia's smile tightened. "The board has already reviewed the matter." That was her favorite phrase. The board has reviewed. What she meant was, I decided. After the meeting, Frank caught me in the parking lot. He was in his late 60s, retired postal inspector, sharp eyes, slow voice. "You're new," he said. "I'm starting to realize that." He nodded toward the clubhouse. "She does this to new people, tests them. If they fold early, she keeps going. What happens if they don't fold?" Frank looked at my truck. Then she tries to make an example out of them. He told me about a couple fined for their mailbox numbers. A widow forced to repaint her shutters 3 times. A veteran threatened over a flag bracket. A young family reported to the county because their kids' bikes were visible from the sidewalk. "She doesn't enforce rules," Frank said. "She collects obedience." I went home and told Denise. She listened without interrupting. Then she opened the blue binder and added a tab labeled HOA. That tab should have scared Patricia more than any argument I could have made. 2 weeks later, the letter from the HOA attorney arrived. At least, it claimed to be from an attorney. The letterhead said Cooper, Vale, and Steinberg Compliance Council. It accused me of repeated non-compliance, failure to respect community standards, and hostile disregard for association authority. It demanded payment of $1,850 in fines and administrative costs within 10 days. At the bottom, the signature read, "Jonathan Vale, Legal Compliance Director." Vale, same last name as Patricia. Denise saw it immediately. She pulled her laptop close, searched the State Bar database, then searched business records. Jonathan Vale was Patricia's son. He had a bachelor's degree in communications, a certificate in conflict mediation, and no law license. Cooper, Vale, and Steinberg was not a law firm. It was a consulting company registered 18 months earlier to a mailbox store outside Charlotte. Denise printed everything. The State Bar search, the business filing, the envelope, the letter. Then she wrote one note in the margin. Misrepresentation of legal authority. I looked at her. "Should I be worried that you look happy?" "I'm not happy," she said. "I'm organized." The next morning, I sent another polite email requesting validation of the fines, meeting minutes, authorizing enforcement, evidence of violations, and clarification on whether the letter was issued by a licensed attorney. Patricia did not answer. Instead, 3 days later, she walked onto our property. I was in the garage, changing a fuel filter on my own lawn tractor, when I heard Denise say from the porch, "Can I help you?" Patricia was halfway up the driveway, phone in hand, recording. She had 2 board members with her, one man I recognized from the meeting, and a woman with a folder pressed to her chest like it might protect her from common sense. Patricia pointed at my garage. This confirms unauthorized mechanical activity. I stepped out, wiping my hands. This is my tractor. That is not the issue. It's literally the tractor. She raised her phone. You have been warned about operating a repair business from this property. I'm not operating a business. I'm fixing my own equipment. Patricia's eyes flicked toward Denise. Your husband has created ongoing nuisance conditions. Denise stepped down one porch step. You are standing on private property without permission, she said. Patricia laughed once, not because it was funny, because she thought the statement was beneath her. The HOA has inspection authority. Not inside our garage, Denise said. Common interest communities allow compliance review. From common areas, Denise replied. Not trespass. That was the first time Patricia really looked at her. Until then, Denise had just been my wife in the background. Quiet, polite, easy to ignore. Patricia made the mistake of thinking quiet meant soft. Ma'am, Patricia said, I'm going to ask you not to interfere with association business. Denise smiled. Just a little. That would be easier if you were conducting any. One board member suddenly became fascinated with the grass. Patricia turned red at the neck. I am documenting a violation. And I am documenting trespass, Denise said. She lifted her own phone. Calm. Steady. No shaking. No raised voice. Patricia took one more photo of the garage, then said, You'll regret making this difficult. That sentence mattered later. Denise wrote it down at the kitchen table 5 minutes after they left. Exact time, exact words, witnesses present. I asked her if she wanted me to call the police. No, she said. Why not? Because Patricia wants a police report. She just wants to be the first person to create one. 3 days later, she did. It was a Tuesday evening. I had parked my truck in the driveway at an angle because I had been unloading lumber into the garage. The truck was not blocking the sidewalk. It was not in the street. It was not leaking oil. It was just there, existing in a way Patricia found personally offensive. At 6:18 p.m., I heard sirens. Not loud sirens, just that short burst police use when they are telling a neighborhood, yes, we are here and people should look outside. 2 patrol cars stopped in front of my house. Patricia's Lexus was already parked across the street. That told me everything. She did not call and wait. She called and watched. Officer Daniels stepped out first. Mid-40s, calm, tired eyes. The second officer, younger, stayed near the curb. Patricia rushed toward them with her folder open. He has been operating a commercial business from this property for weeks, she said, before they even reached the driveway. He has ignored enforcement notices, threatened board representatives, and now he is obstructing community access. Officer Daniels looked at my driveway, then at my truck, then at me. What community access? Patricia pointed to the sidewalk. The presence of that vehicle creates a visibility hazard and interferes with safe neighborhood presentation. To his credit, Officer Daniels did not laugh. He asked me, Sir, is this your truck? Yes. Your driveway? Yes. Any weapons on you? No. Anyone hurt or threatened? No. Patricia cut in. He threatened me on Friday. Officer Daniels turned. What did he say? Patricia hesitated. He said I was trespassing. That is not a threat, Denise said from the porch. Every head turned. She had come outside wearing jeans, a plain gray blouse, and the navy jacket she had worn to lunch with an old colleague earlier that day. Her federal retiree credentials were still clipped inside the jacket pocket, partly visible because she had been using them to enter a federal building downtown that afternoon. Patricia's eyes narrowed. And who are you? My wife, I said. Patricia ignored me. Ma'am, this is an HOA enforcement matter. You need to let the officers speak with the homeowner. Denise stepped down onto the walkway. I am the co-owner. Patricia looked at Officer Daniels. That woman has been interfering with board duties. She recorded us during a compliance inspection. Officer Daniels asked, Were you on their property? Patricia lifted her chin. We have inspection authority. Denise said, No, you don't. Patricia snapped then. Not screamed. Snapped. There is a difference. A scream comes from fear. A snap comes from a person who believes nobody is allowed to push back. She pointed straight at Denise. Officer, she is trespassing in my neighborhood too. I want her removed from this area until the board can complete its investigation. That was the sentence. That was the one. Officer Daniels stopped writing. He looked at Denise again. His eyes moved to the credential clipped at her belt. Ma'am, he said carefully, can I see that ID? Patricia smiled. For half a second. She thought he was about to help her. Denise removed the credential case and handed it over. Officer Daniels opened it. His face changed. Not dramatic, not shocked, just professional in a very different direction. He read her name. Then the retired federal investigator designation. Then the agency seal. Then he looked at her. You're retired? Yes. How long? 8 months. He handed it back with both hands. Thank you, ma'am. Patricia's smile disappeared. What is that? She asked. Officer Daniels did not answer her. Denise did. It is federal identification. Patricia blinked. Federal what? Identification. The younger officer suddenly looked more interested in his body camera. Officer Daniels turned to Patricia. Ma'am, I need you to explain exactly what crime you are reporting. Patricia opened her folder, then closed it, then opened it again. The truck violates community standards. That is not a criminal matter. He is running a business. Do you have evidence of commercial transactions? We have observed mechanical activity. On his own property? In violation of HOA standards. That is civil. He threatened me. He said you were trespassing? He was aggressive. Officer Daniels looked at me. I was standing beside my truck with a rag in my hand, looking about as aggressive as a man waiting for paint to dry. Then he looked at Denise. Do you have video of the interaction? Yes, Denise said. Patricia's head turned fast. Denise pulled out her phone. She did not make a speech. She did not add commentary. She just played the video. There was Patricia walking up our driveway. Patricia recording inside our garage. Patricia saying I would regret making things difficult. Patricia claiming inspection authority. Patricia standing on property she had no right to enter. Officer Daniels watched without expression. When it ended, he asked, Did you give them permission to enter your driveway? No, Denise said. He looked at Patricia. Ma'am, based on what I've seen, this appears to be a civil HOA dispute, and I'm not seeing a criminal violation by the homeowners. Patricia's voice dropped. You're not understanding the governing documents. Officer Daniels stared at her for a second. Police officers hear a lot of strange things, but being told to enforce HOA paperwork against a woman with federal credentials on her own porch seemed to be a new flavor. I understand I don't enforce HOA documents, he said. Then Denise said the line that changed everything. Officer, there is one more issue. Patricia looked at her sharply. Denise turned to me. Get the folder. I went inside and brought out the blue binder. The big one. The one with tabs. Truck title. HOA notices. False attorney letter. State bar search. Business registration. Photos. Video timestamps. Email printouts. Certified mail receipts. Meeting notes. Patricia's threat. Denise handed Officer Daniels a copy of the fake legal letter. This was sent to us under the appearance of legal counsel. The sender is not a licensed attorney. The company is registered to a mailbox address. The signer appears to be Mrs. Vale's son. Patricia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Denise continued. We are not asking you to settle an HOA issue, but if a police report is being created tonight, I want it noted that the person who called you has also sent misleading legal demands, entered our property after being told not to, and made statements that may be relevant to harassment. Officer Daniels read the first page. Then the second. Then he looked at Patricia. You sent this? Patricia recovered just enough to sound offended. The association sent a compliance notice. This says legal counsel. Our compliance director handles legal coordination. Is he an attorney? Patricia looked away. That was answer enough. The younger officer stepped slightly closer to Daniels. The street had gone quiet by then. Curtains had moved. Garage doors were half open. Frank Delaney stood at the edge of his lawn with his arms crossed. Mr. Castillo was pretending to water a plant that had been wet for 10 minutes. Patricia could feel it. People like her live on public control. Losing it in public is worse than losing it in private. She tried one more time. Officer, I am the elected president of this association. These residents have created months of disruption. We have a right to protect property values. Denise looked at her. Patricia, you called armed police to remove me from my own home because you didn't like my husband's truck. That sentence landed harder than yelling would have. Officer Daniels closed the folder. Here's what's going to happen, he said. No one is being removed. No citation is being issued to the homeowners. This call will be documented as a civil dispute. Mrs. Vale, you and any board representatives need to stay off their property unless invited or unless you have a lawful court order. Patricia stared at him. A court order? Yes, ma'am. We have HOA authority, not more than property law. There it was. The first crack. Not in the case. In Patricia. Her confidence did not vanish all at once. It flickered, like a bulb deciding whether it still wanted to live. Officer Daniels gave me a case number. Denise asked for his badge number and the incident report process. He gave both without hesitation. As the officers left, Patricia stood beside her Lexus, gripping her folder so tightly the papers bent. Then Frank Delaney called from across the street. Patricia, does this mean my son can bring his truck this weekend? Nobody laughed out loud. Several people looked like they wanted to. That should have been the end of it. A reasonable person would have gone home, sat down, and reconsidered every decision that led to being corrected by police in front of half the neighborhood. Patricia was not a reasonable person. She was embarrassed. And embarrassed bullies are dangerous because they stop trying to win and start trying to punish. The next morning, every homeowner received an email from the HOA. Subject line, safety concerns regarding unauthorized commercial activity. It did not name me directly. It did not need to. The message said the board had contacted law enforcement regarding ongoing violations by a resident whose property activities have raised safety and compliance concerns. It said the board remained committed to preserving community standards despite intimidation and interference. Denise read it while standing in the kitchen. Then she smiled. Not a happy smile. The other one. She just put it in writing, she said. That afternoon, 3 neighbors came by separately. Frank brought copies of his own old violation letters. Mr. Castillo brought photos of Patricia's board members parking in guest spaces overnight while fining others for the same thing. The retired teacher across the street, Mrs. Hollis, brought something better. Minutes. She had served as board secretary 2 years earlier before Patricia pushed her out. Mrs. Hollis still had meeting minutes, email chains, and budget documents. She said Patricia had a habit of correcting minutes after meetings to make votes appear unanimous. Denise placed everything into the blue binder. Then she made a second binder. That was when I knew the situation had graduated. 1 binder meant problem. 2 binders meant Patricia had entered federal grandma territory. Over the next 2 weeks, Denise did what she used to do professionally. She built a timeline. Not a rant, not a Facebook post, not a complaint full of feelings. A timeline. Date, event, document, witness, evidence. First violation notice. Truck rule. Improper fine. Misleading legal demand. Unlicensed legal representation. Trespass video. Police call. False community email. Pattern of selective enforcement. Altered meeting minutes. Possible misuse of HOA funds. That last one came from Frank. He had been digging through publicly available county and association records. Briar Glen collected a special maintenance assessment the year before for pond restoration. Every homeowner paid $600. The HOA announced that the pond banks had been reinforced, drainage improved, and erosion repaired. But Frank had photos, before and after. Nothing had changed except a new bench and a sign. The invoice was for $68,400. The contractor was Vale Community Services, LLC. Registered agent, Jonathan Vale. Patricia's son. Denise looked at that invoice for a long time. Then she said, "There it is." I asked, "There what is?" The reason she needs control. That is the thing about small tyrants. Sometimes the rule enforcement is not the real business. It is the shield around the real business. 3 days later, Denise sent a formal records request to the HOA under North Carolina Nonprofit Association laws and the community's own bylaws. She requested financial statements, board meeting minutes, contractor invoices, conflict of interest disclosures, enforcement logs, attorney communications related to our property, and the full basis for all fines. Patricia refused. Not directly. People like Patricia rarely refuse directly. They delay, redirect, request forms, cite procedures that don't exist, and pretend the calendar is confused. She replied that records would be available at the next quarterly homeowner review. That was 91 days away. Denise replied with the bylaw section requiring inspection within 10 business days. Patricia replied that Denise's tone was hostile. Denise printed that too. On the 10th business day, we received a banker's box. Not from Patricia, from Melissa Grant, the HOA treasurer. Melissa arrived at our door at 7:40 in the evening with the box in both arms and fear all over her face. "I can't be part of this anymore," she said. We invited her in. She sat at our kitchen table and told us what everyone in Briar Glen suspected, but nobody had been able to prove. Patricia controlled the board by controlling information. She picked vendors. She approved emergency spending. She pushed fines against residents who questioned her. She used her son's companies for compliance letters, landscape consulting, pond repair coordination, architectural review support, and community risk management. Melissa said she had questioned the invoices twice. Both times, Patricia threatened to remove her from the board for misconduct. Then came the part that made Denise sit very still. Melissa said, "The money doesn't all stay in the HOA account." She opened the box. Bank statements, invoices, email approvals, internal spreadsheets, payment records. At least $112,000 over 3 years had moved from Briar Glen accounts into companies connected to Patricia's family. Some of it might have been legal if properly disclosed and approved. But it had not been disclosed. It had not been voted on. And some of the services appeared to exist only as PDFs with invoice numbers. Denise asked one question. Did any of this involve federal funds? Melissa hesitated, then nodded. The stormwater grant. I had forgotten about that. 2 years earlier, Briar Glen received a county-administered stormwater improvement grant connected to a federal environmental program. It was supposed to help reduce runoff into the creek behind the pond. The HOA newsletter had celebrated it for months. According to Melissa, part of that money was paid to Vale Community Services for grant compliance coordination. Denise leaned back. That was the moment her old job walked back into our kitchen. Because HOA bullying is one thing. Misusing money connected to a federal grant is a different animal entirely. Patricia did not know it yet, but the fight had left the driveway. It had left the truck. It had left the HOA rulebook. It had walked into the kind of paperwork Denise used to read for a living. The next morning, Denise made 3 calls. The first was to the county office that administered the grant. The second was to a former colleague who still worked in federal program oversight. The third was to Officer Daniels, not to ask for help, but to request the final police report from the night Patricia called. By Friday, Denise had filed formal complaints with the county, the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, and the federal agency connected to the grant funding. She attached everything: invoices, bank records, police report, false legal letter, state bar search, trespass video, community email, HOA bylaws, records denial, grant documents. Patricia had built her power on homeowners being too busy, too tired, or too afraid to organize the truth. Unfortunately for her, my wife had spent 2 decades organizing truth for a living. The special homeowners meeting was called 6 weeks later. Not by Patricia. By petition. The bylaws required 25% of homeowners to sign. We needed 42 signatures. We got 68. The meeting took place in the clubhouse, the same room where Patricia had dismissed me weeks earlier. Only this time, every chair was full. People stood along the walls. Even the hallway was packed. Patricia sat at the front table with her gavel. But she looked different. The navy blazer was there. The folder was there. The lipstick, the posture, the HOA president face. All present. But the control was gone. You could feel it. Control has a temperature. When it leaves a room, everyone notices. Patricia tried to open the meeting by declaring it improperly noticed. Frank stood up with the petition copies. Mrs. Hollis stood up with the bylaw section. Melissa stood up with the board notice receipt. Denise did not stand yet. She waited. That was her way. Let everyone show the foundation before you bring out the roof. Patricia said, "This gathering has become a personal attack against association leadership." Mr. Castillo said, "No, Patricia. It became personal when you called the police on Marcus." A murmur moved through the room. Patricia struck the gavel. Denise finally stood. She did not walk to the front dramatically. She did not hold up a stack of papers like a courtroom movie. She simply stood beside her chair, opened her folder, and spoke in the same calm voice she had used on our porch. "My name is Denise Ellison. My husband and I are co-owners of Lot 42. I am a retired federal investigator. I am not here tonight in that capacity. I am here as a homeowner." The room went completely quiet. Patricia stared at her. Denise continued. "Over the past several weeks, multiple homeowners have provided records showing a pattern of selective enforcement, misleading legal demands, undisclosed related party vendor payments, altered meeting documentation, and possible misuse of funds connected to a public grant." Patricia stood. "You need to be very careful with accusations." Denise looked at her. "I am." 2 words. That was all. Patricia sat back down. Denise passed copies to the homeowners nearest the aisles. They passed them down the rows. Summaries, not full binders. Clean, dated, numbered, easy to follow. The fake legal letter, the business registration, the state bar result, the truck rule, the police report, the contractor payments, the grant invoice, the related party companies, the failure to disclose conflicts. The room changed as people read. Confusion became recognition. Recognition became anger. Anger became something more useful. Votes. Frank made the motion to remove Patricia as HOA president, pending investigation. Mrs. Hollis seconded it. Patricia declared the motion out of order. Melissa cited the bylaw section, allowing removal by homeowner vote during a special meeting. Patricia said Melissa was no longer recognized as treasurer. Melissa said, "You don't get to fire me to avoid the records." People clapped. Patricia struck the gavel again, harder this time. Nobody cared. The vote was called. By the time hands went up, Patricia already knew. 72 in favor, 9 opposed, 4 abstained. Just like that, the crown came off. But the best part came 3 minutes later. Officer Daniels walked in, not with sirens, not with drama, just through the side door, accompanied by a county investigator and a woman from the grant compliance office. Patricia saw them and went pale. Not because police were there. She had called police before. She went pale because this time they had not come for us. The county investigator asked to speak with her regarding financial records and grant disbursement documents. The grant compliance woman asked for access to board files. Officer Daniels stood nearby, professional and quiet, the same way he had stood in front of our house when Patricia tried to turn him into her personal enforcement tool. Patricia looked at Denise. For the first time since I met her, she had no polished phrase ready, no community harmony, no board authority, no aesthetic standards, no homeowner partnership. Just silence. And in that silence, everybody in Briar Glen finally heard what had been underneath her leadership the whole time. Fear. 2 months later, Patricia Vale resigned from the board completely. Her son's companies were terminated from all HOA contracts. The new board froze vendor payments pending audit. The state opened a consumer complaint review. The county demanded repayment documentation for the grant-related expenses. The federal agency requested records directly. I am not going to pretend everyone went to prison or that a movie ending dropped from the sky. Real consequences move slower than stories. But Patricia lost the thing she cared about most: control. She sold her house the following spring. The Lexus disappeared first. Then the yard sign went up. Then one morning a moving truck blocked the street, and nobody filed a complaint about it. Frank stood beside me at the curb drinking coffee. "Think we should measure how long that truck stays there?" he asked. I said, "Only if it threatens community harmony." He laughed so hard he spilled coffee on his shoes. As for my truck, it still sits in my driveway. Same dented bumper. Same scratches. Same supposedly dangerous appearance. The new HOA board passed a clarification that personal vehicles parked legally in private driveways could not be fined based on aesthetic interpretation. Denise called that phrase Patricia's ghost. We still keep the blue binder. Actually, we keep both binders. Denise says they are part of the house now, like the water heater or the smoke detectors. You hope you don't need them, but you are glad they are there. Sometimes neighbors still ask her about what happened that night with the police. She never makes it dramatic. She just says, "Patricia called the wrong house." That is the cleanest version. But I think about it differently. Patricia thought authority was something you performed. The blazer, the folder, the email blasts, the gavel, the legal-looking letters, the slow drive past people's homes. Denise knew authority was something you proved. With records, with facts, with dates, with signatures, with the patience to let people reveal themselves. That was the lesson Patricia learned too late. You can scare tired homeowners for a while. You can dress up personal grudges in official language. You can call the police and hope your confidence fills the gaps in your story. But eventually, you run into somebody who keeps the paper. And if you are very unlucky, that somebody's wife spent 21 years reading lies for the federal government.